Hello, everyone, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar on strategies to improve IT operations and planning. My name is Dennis Pierce, and I'll be moderating today's event. I'm the former editor of eSchool News, now a freelance education writer and consultant, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a really informative session. Today's webinar is sponsored by SchoolDude, a Dude Solutions company. SchoolDude delivers cloud-based applications to help education institutions of all sizes better manage their IT and business operations. Before I introduce our presenters, I want to just take a minute to go over some of the features of the platform we'll be using. Today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing any of the content. Within a few days, you'll get an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar along with the PDF of the slides. You can submit questions for the presenters at any time during the presentation by typing them into the purple Q&A box pressing the purple Q&A box and typing your question into the box and then hitting submit. And we'll save those questions for a Q&A session that I'll lead with our presenters at the end of the webinar. We also have a group chat function that you can launch by clicking on the blue chat button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to use this feature to chat among yourselves or to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you have a technical question. But please don't use that feature to ask questions of the panelists. Use the Q&A box for that. If you find that you're having a hard time reading the text on the slides, you can enlarge that portion of your screen by clicking on the box in the upper right-hand corner of the slide window, or you can click on the double arrows for a full screen view of the slide presentation. And finally, we encourage you to join the back channel conversation on Twitter by using the Twitter handle @SchoolDude and the hashtag ESNWebinar in your tweets. And SchoolDude has made a few white paper resources available for you to download as well. You can find those in the resource list box in the bottom left of your screen. So I'd encourage you to check those out as well. With those items out of the way, let's get started with our presentation. Our speakers today are Brian Laura and Forrest Cooper from Dude Solutions. As the Chief Information Officer and Chief Technology Officer for Dude Solutions, Brian Laura is responsible for IT infrastructure and information security, as well as application development and product management. Brian has served as a CIO or CTO at multiple organizations since 2008, and he understands the challenges that CIOs and IT directors face in their day-to-day operations. A frequent speaker at key technical and industry conferences, Brian has a BS in engineering from North Carolina State University, and he's a member of the Strategic Advisory Board of NC State's Department of Computer Science. Forrest Cooper is a senior applications engineer for Dude Solutions, where he demonstrates the value of SchoolDude Solutions and shows IT professionals how technology can help them become more efficient in their daily operations. His experience and knowledge helps SchoolDude's clients save money, time, and resources. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Forrest Cooper.
All right, thank you, Dennis. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. Again, my name is Forrest Cooper. I'm here to run you through, first and foremost, a quick agenda of what we'll be covering on the webcast. And from there, I'll be handing things over to Brian and Laura. But initially, we're going to take just a quick moment to speak about SchoolDude. I'll give you a quick overview of the organization. From there, I will be handing things to Brian and Laura to speak to his real-world experience in the CIO position. I'll take things back over from there to speak through something called the APPEM model today and some strategy around better ways to capture clean data and operationalize the data that we have, not only for our daily operations but also for our capital planning processes. And then from there, we'll also take a quick jump into our new Technology Essentials Suite to show you some of the new solutions we are taking to the market. At the end of that, we'll hand things back over to Dennis, and we will have a quick Q&A. Just to give you a quick overview of SchoolDude, we've been around since 1999, so about 18 years in the industry, starting out really focused heavily on maintenance management, infrastructure management, and asset management solutions for schools and other organizations as such came about around 2007. But in that time, we have gained a client base of right at 10,000 clients across North America and about 9 other countries. Presently working with about 6,000 plus educational institutions. And as you can see on screen, quite a large footprint with a number of professionals that are using our solutions. Now at this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Brian. And Brian, you can go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Brian Laura. Thank you all for joining. Appreciate everybody taking the time. We've got a few different slides and wanted to cover, kind of give you an overview just real quickly about Dude Solutions, kind of how we are as a company our size. You know, we're of course in the commercial space. We're a software company, right, creating software as a service solutions to all of our clients that we serve in the markets. You know, when you look at our size, we're about 500 employees and growing. We've experienced a lot of rapid growth within our organization, both from our commercial success in the markets, our product success, and the support and ongoing support of our clients over the years. When you sort of map us in size, you know, kind of wanted to frame that as best as we could to organizational, educational organizations, you know, in that space. We run typically, if you think about a technician in our world, an IT technician, it's about a 1 to 60 ratio of number of employees at the Dude versus the number of IT technicians that support that. The things I'm going to talk about here, you know, they're really specific to what we call corporate IT, right? So it's the IT that supports our employees and making them productive in that space. I'm not really going to address today any of our production environment that's associated with, you know, our Dude Cloud and where we run all of our production commercial-facing applications. But we're really focused on sort of the corporate piece that I think is most relevant to the audience that we're speaking to today. If you look at kind of our priorities in the space, there's a number of really hot topics in the IT space that we really face. And I think, you know, a number of these, just to sort of frame it, we're in a highly dynamic and ever-changing landscape out in the market and the world, right? There's a number of things that are happening, and the rate at the change in technology innovation and new things and threats to businesses and entities, you know, is just progressing at a very high rate, and that rate really even seems to be accelerating. Part of what we wanted to cover today is a few main topics around where do we really put a lot of key focus areas within the IT organization, and how do we talk and think about that. So we'll go into a little more detail on each of these major topics, you know, assessments and help desk, and talk about cybersecurity, which is always on my mind, and I know weighs heavily on many IT professionals' minds, and give you some real-world examples of things, too, that we've experienced over at the Dude in the last 12 months or so in some of these different topics. So in terms of assessments, you know, what does our internal environment really look like? We've got, you know, like I mentioned, over 500 employees. We standardize a lot of our laptops and desktop and workstation builds. We're a mix of both, you know, Windows and Mac users, because when you look at our population, we've got sort of a range of user base that spans software developers, you know, heavy financial power users, general business employees, support, sales, all types of different roles within the company. And so that drives a little bit of diversity, hence the different ratios for support in terms of what we're looking at. You know, we're a mid-sized company, but we buy a lot of technology. We buy a lot of software licenses. We buy a lot of infrastructure and different things. Part of the challenge, like any entity, you know, we hire employees. Many of our employees stay years and years with the Dude. Some employees do leave. As there is turnover in any organization, how do you make sure that you're staying compliant with the software license agreements that you have in place? As the organization grows, you know, when does a different sort of licensing model make sense? You know, particularly when you look at Microsoft and some of the larger technology software providers that you look at, those can get exceptionally complex, and they change relatively frequently to try to keep you on that treadmill of how do you map that and how do they maintain their income on that. It's the same sort of structure in the educational market, but better prices, which is nice. We look at a lot of our employees. If you look at sort of the average age of our employees, it's under 30, and part of that is because we hire a lot of salespeople, we hire a lot of developers, software developers in our world, and so that drives a lot of call it a BYOD, but I'd say personalization and selection of compute device. So our employees get dude-issued computers, but we also have reimbursement policies for smartphones, and many of our personnel are on 24/7 support, depending on their role and responsibility within the organization. People have tablets, people have different pieces, and so we've updated our information security policies over the last 12 months to really better handle this and better identify what that is. Where does an IT help desk support begin and end, particularly in that space where an employee may be bringing out a device that's not owned by your entity, is really key. We have provide a lot of course, access. Any location you have to have internet access. People need to do work, right, and get work done. The Dude itself has been software as a service from the beginning. There's a lot of interesting software as a service solutions depending on what you're trying to solve for in the space. And so obviously bandwidth and traffic and filtering against that is really key, particularly around March Madness basketball season. How do you sort of what's the right traffic that you want for business employees to be productive versus things that may be interesting but can really suck up your bandwidth and pull that away. We've got some policies that are in place within all of our web content filtering that really blocks all the things that people just have no reason to go access, all the bad stuff, right? Adult sites, ISIS, all those things, those are just simply blocked. We also block non-productive things like Netflix is blocked on our network, so you can't run Netflix. But there's big gray areas of spaces where when is a third-party access tool useful for a business reason or not. YouTube is a great example of that because there's some really great educational material on YouTube. And so that's an area where we sort of structure it where we limit the amount in that space, and there's some neat technologies out there to do that. But for us, it's all about how do we make sure that the environment that we're creating creates a useful and productive environment for our employees. We do use a lot of our own tools and capabilities. Some of that is the same version that we offer commercially to our clients. Some of it is we use at an earlier stage to really get a solid understanding of how this would work commercially before we productize a new feature. One of those that I would just mention here is Insight. We use that. It does agentless discovery, automatic discovery of all compute devices and peripheral, and there's some really, really neat things that you can do in that space to rapidly understand what does the world look like in your organization in terms of compute devices. It can be surprising when you first run these things and you think how many computers are out there or what type or what model, and it's insightful to figure out what's really there. So that's an important piece of managing an IT environment is knowing what you've got. Spend a little time talking about IT help desk. We really view in our philosophy, my personal technical philosophy is really around a learning and a service organization. So, our help desk is staffed by some really talented individuals, and they're really focused on service, right? Because when one of our employees has something that goes wrong, a laptop breaks, an hour before a big presentation, it is a personal experience to that employee, right? And how do we go the extra mile to really make them comfortable, make them confident that we can solve their problem and get them back in a good position and be productive? So that's really a key theme that we stress, and we do a lot of pieces in that space to try to include that. One thing as an example, when I talk about how do we measure work in that space and activities, we can run through some stats, but one of the pieces that's really key is surveys, right? So whenever an IT professional does some sort of work, whether that's issuing some new equipment, helping them with new software, fixing some broke incident or some other issue, there's an opportunity for them to complete our employees a survey that says, hey, this service was good, great, or exceptional, and man, if you could do this over again, I'd really look for this, or man, this was really insightful. And I'll tell you, one of the ways that we've tried to reinforce the service mentality is those statistics roll back into individual goals with our corporate IT staff and the goals for the year. So we pay them a base salary based on their experience and time and all those sort of things. But there's also a variable component that is highly tied to the positive customer service feedback. So if they're doing a good job and employees say, hey man, did a good job, they're gonna see that. So we like to try to create these feedback loops. We like to try to create goals that direct a certain activity and outcome for the business in that space. We measure a ton of different KPIs. I'll share some with you in just a little bit, but how do we know how much work there is out there? Are we staffed appropriately? Are there backlogs? There's constantly things that are going on in the environment. With 500 employees, it may not be intuitively obvious, but we have a vast aging of workstations and laptops. So we track all that. We have a set refresh cycle. How do we tie, is Forrest ready? Does he have an optimal computer? How do we make sure we get the right one to him? So there's a lot of work that we do to measure that as well. We look at how much time is it taking between a request. We try to make it as easy and seamless to put in a request. We use tools, which I'm sure Forrest will talk about in a little bit too, is the tools that we use to streamline that sort of ticketing input and output, and looking at those statistics. Of course, we follow a lot of standards, and we adapt different standards in the industry to the dude in our specific operating model. So of course, there's service request, change, incident, typical sort of following IT standards. We adapt a lot of ITIL processes to our environment. And then, like I did mention, we've experienced a lot of growth. If you go back, a few years, we've added a couple hundred employees over the last few years. We have the great opportunity and potential to continue that rapid growth as our products are really resounding and getting a lot of attention and adoption from our clients. So we see that continuing. So when I think about planning and futures, part of it comes in as budgets. And so one of the tips that I use at the Dude is I build in those ratios of corporate IT, that's 60-1 into the business plan. So then when it comes time for the fall plan for the budget for next year, I don't always have to argue for headcount, right? Because if we add 50 people or we add 100 people, I might not be totally connected to the other parts of the business that they're making those adds, but I know that the model will hold that if we hit those higher numbers, that the headcount would be there to keep and maintain those ratios. So a little tip that I find really useful, especially when you're talking to CFOs. If you go to the next, so on this view, on the next slide, this is kind of give you some view into real world KPIs from our clients primarily in the education market, and what they're seeing and kind of what those statistics look like in terms of ticket completion times, what's the typical number of tickets, and when I say ticket, that's regardless of source, whether it's a service request, a change, an incident, just the aggregate number of tickets. And so hopefully this would give everyone on the phone an idea of, well, how do you compare to that KPI? If you've used a lot of our Dude products, we really have a lot of data-centric views on things. We want to be able to show the business outcome around these and how we're doing. I know Forrest will talk some more about some of those aspects, but it's really important in IT. We can't see everything that's going on every minute. So how do we aggregate these views? How do we use tools and systems to extend that and to scale our labor and to scale our reach and controls over these really dynamic, changing environments? So this next topic of cybersecurity, we could have several different webcasts on this one. It's amazing to me what's happened even just over the last 5 years in terms of the number and types of threats that are out in the world. The world is not a safe place from a cybersecurity standpoint, in particular. When I look at that changing landscape, it's really evolved beyond just the bad guys trying to go after big organizations and disrupt those. And we all know the stories of the Targets and the Chase banks and all those different examples that are out, very frequently in publications. But what is really concerning to me in particular is that there's an entire black market on the dark web that really encourages the commercial exploit of these type of cybersecurity risks. And what that illegal dark web organization is really encouraging is the commercialization of exploits. And so that doesn't make our job any easier as IT professionals. In fact, it makes it harder. And so, when I look at that and say, let's set aside production environment and just talk about corporate IT, where does that cybersecurity risk, where are big points of that? And, anywhere where you put people and computers together, that's a nexus for potential risk. When you look at that space, and I'll give you some examples that have happened here at the Dude in the last 12 months, we've had numerous phishing attempts. We have that very frequently. I think that's something people are familiar with, where you get an email, there's a link, do you know where you got the email? Should you click the link? We know as IT professionals, but do all of our constituents and stakeholders that we support know? Not always, and people make mistakes. We do annual security training for all of our employees. It's automated with our tools. For certain roles within the Dude, we go even deeper and do really specific, particularly for development and technical roles or systems administrators. Phishing, I just mentioned, there's some neat things out there, neat solutions out there where you can do ethical simulated phishing attacks. If you're ever interested in that, there's some neat companies there. We've used one of them, and it's if you do the training to the employees and stakeholders, and you can find out the reason why we use that is so that we can do more focused training on people that accidentally click the wrong thing. With ransomware, a few years ago, that was really mostly focused at law firms, and they were getting targeted, and small law firms in particular, having someone lock up their records and then pay a fee to get access to it, basically extort them for their information in that space. Well, it happens beyond just legal firms today. We've actually had 2 attempts in the last 12 months, and both of them, I'm pleased to say, were thwarted by positive actions of our employees. One of them, even in particular, was a brand new employee, had just gone through our onboarding process and orientation, where they get health benefits and learn about the dude. And of course, they went through the information security training, and literally the day after that, they got a ransomware attack. And thank goodness they did the right thing. They took their computer off the network, right? If you ever get one of those, take it off the network, first thing. And then they brought it to our help desk, the corporate IT help desk, helped them and resolve that, and there was no use. The reason why I want to take it off the network is so whatever's running there does not get access to other information on other computers. And so we were able to thwart that. It's just an element where in the world where we are today, there's more and more risk at the endpoint where people and end users, are at computers and have access. Patch management, I can't stress it enough. There's a lot of, the endless cycle, Microsoft Tuesday, and we go through that. And it's how do you stay on that treadmill of patching and maintaining it, because something always comes up, something always comes out, and it's hard because at least in our environment we have employees that travel, we have people that work remotely, as an example, on different networks, and so it's a constant area of focus that I think is important. And how do you scan that to see what percentage of your population is current or at risk, whether it's Windows or other devices, is really key. In terms of business continuity, this is a really interesting space because I think a lot of the things that first come to mind to people around business continuity is the big disasters, right? Is a hurricane or a tornado or some crazy incident or something like that. We use one of our own products internally for our management of our business continuance plan and process, and we do annual exercises to test that and test the thoroughness of it, make sure that we're interconnected. I tend to run those unannounced with scary scenarios, which are usually like in the last week of the month when sales is trying to close deals and finance is trying to close the books, right? Because you really want to test these processes and make sure that they're really going to work for you when you need it. This one too, we actually did call our business continuance plan within the last 2 months. It wasn't because of bad weather. It wasn't because of anything that you would expect. It was because of expanding companies. And so we have diversity into our building for internet connectivity from a major supplier and a smaller regional supplier. And then I don't know how many folks know we're in North Carolina in the Cary area, which is a really high growth area, and there was a group that was laying fiber cables for Google, getting Google fiber into this area in North Carolina, and they accidentally cut the cable of the active fiber for the other providers. So we immediately, it failed over to our secondary. Our secondary didn't have the capacity to handle that, and we immediately pulled our business continuance plan. What was important there is, all of our systems, because of prior tests, we knew that we've got customer support. We need to answer phones and chat, right? So we made investments in the last couple of years around getting soft phones on laptops so that we can have customer support personnel work and take calls and support our clients, whether they're in the building or at a different location. And so, even though it's a crazy time when these things happen, our plan did work, and we were able to continue to support and do the right things. This did not in any way affect our production environment, right? It was just the internet connection to our building. But it's just an example of, something that I would have never expected to happen. And of course, because, IT, I now have three-way redundancy. We added another third fiber line, which from a different provider, just in case. So, it's this ongoing learning and improvement process. So this is the last slide that I prepared, and it sort of pulls together a lot of those themes in that space because, in a lot of those examples, it's like, how do we know the environment that we're supporting as IT? How do we adapt and change to a changing environment, like the fiber cable example, or new devices, or employee growth, or changes, or turnover? It's a constantly evolving world. And we basically take a lot of the best practices out there, ITIL, and we adapt that to the Dude and how we operate our entity and organization, and really follow that. And so, it's an ongoing loop and a learning continuous loop that we go through.
All right. Well, everybody, that is Brian finishing up. Dennis, do we have any questions at this time?
Yeah, we do have somebody, Brian, who is asking the 1 to 60 average industry ratio that you mentioned before. Is that IT staff to employees or to devices on the network?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So the 1 to 60 is the ratio at our company at Dude Solutions, and that is solely corporate IT is the 1, and the 60 is employees. So if you actually counted the number of devices, it's more than 60, because our average device count, I think it's just north of like 2.4 per employee.
Okay, great, thanks. There are a few other questions about the SchoolDude platform and some of its capabilities, but Forrest, I know you're about to talk about those, so we can save those for the end. So at this time, Forrest, if you want to launch into a discussion of the platform, that'd be great.
Thanks, Dennis. And absolutely, we'll definitely be jumping into the platform itself here in just a few minutes. What I'm going to do first, everybody, is take just a few moments to speak a little bit of strategy. First, about obviously the velocity and rate at which technology is growing, the rate at which it's growing in our classrooms, and obviously presently there's no indication that velocity and that rate of growth is going to be changing anytime soon. And like Brian said, we're actually seeing that it's going to be accelerating even more. So obviously the changes that are associated with this type of rapid growth is putting an extremely large amount of demand on our IT professionals across many industries across the country. And today we're going to discuss a few strategies to help really manage these changes, some common challenges that many IT departments are facing, and then historical trends that we've seen across the country, some pitfalls, some mistakes, some areas where we could have most certainly leveraged technology to make our lives a little easier. And I'll even give you some examples of here in our own shop, in our own office, some things that we have deployed and the impacts that has made. And I know Brian indicated to a few of those earlier. So real quick recap before we do dive in. Obviously, we know that there's some pretty common consistencies across most IT departments, some common challenges. Lack of budget, lack of staffing. Obviously, most budgets are not growing. Matter of fact, they may be even shrinking. So how do we do more with less? How do we lean on and leverage technology to do that? Obviously, in our classrooms, we're now looking at managing and upkeeping a large number of devices already, but that number is growing. So again, how can we leverage technology to do that? And when it all boils down to it, time is really the most precious commodity that we have in our day. How do we put time back in the day using technology? How do we prevent things from taking time away from us? And then the last piece that we'll touch on from a challenges perspective, a little bit more provocative, but it's called a perception gap. And this does vary from one organization to the next, but a perception gap could really be, as I unpack this a little bit, perception gaps between your customers and your teams. Or it could be a perception gap between your teams and leadership and other decision makers. We know that those perception gaps exist. We know the reasons why. Just like with maintenance individuals, maintenance professionals, they're only around when things are broken. So IT professionals face some of those same situations where, hey, I only see you when something's going wrong. So we want to make sure that we have ways to use data information and obviously a level of service that can help to close those perception gaps. So everybody, we're going to introduce a model that we've really adopted here at Dude Solutions and SchoolDude as sort of our mantra to how we approach using our solutions and planning. So there's nothing really game-changing about what you're seeing on screen right now. This is pretty common sense stuff, but what is game-changing is how we can actually employ this type of thought process to really make a huge impact on our operation. So believe it or not, most of you probably already do this every single day. For example, if I'm going to the grocery store tonight, I'm going to assess, first of all, what do I have in the pantry? What do I have in the fridge? What do I have to buy? From there, I'm going to prioritize, which aisles do I need to go down to and which ones do I do first, second, and third. And I'm going to make a plan. From there, I'm going to execute on my plan, and I'm going to go grocery shopping. So that's just a really generic example. By the way, if my wife goes to Target, she's going to assess, how do I hit every single aisle here? How do I not miss a sale? It's really quite funny. But today we'll keep this really more specifically to a few things. Assessing from a capital planning perspective, assessing our network and our assets and really what do we have out there, but also assessing our operations. How are we doing from a service perspective? All right. So some examples that we've put up on screen here are really speaking about, first and foremost, we have to have a baseline. We have to start somewhere. We have to have a baseline understanding of what hardware is out there, what software is on board, what type of licensable inventory do we have, and does that all stack up? All right, we also need to be able to assess our performance, looking at ticket histories, looking at metrics. Do we have any SLAs in place, or are we getting to work in a timely fashion and as far as getting our customers taken care of? Now, in many instances, having an assessment like this can be pretty time-consuming, especially if you don't have mechanisms in place to give you data. I'll give you an example. As Brian had mentioned, we've been using our asset discovery tool, our agentless tool called Insight, for a while now. But prior to having that technology, we were sneaker netting it. We were walking around the building. We were taking employees off of task for a few weeks, a year almost, to go around and assess, making sure that people still have the hardware they're supposed to have. And that even then, that wasn't really even giving us a really clear picture of the software installed on board. Now, we can do that same process in a matter of minutes, sometimes hours, but usually a matter of minutes. Now, moving down the line here, obviously, once we've found a way to have a baseline understanding of what we have, what condition it's in, our operations, we're going to prioritize. And we're going to prioritize based on what we know. But typically, there are things that are going to drive these priorities. For instance, if I have a 4 or 5 year replacement cycle for my assets, then that ultimately, that metric alone is going to help me prioritize my asset replacements. But looking at issues like, how is this going to impact security? How is this going to impact productivity for really any employees or, even impact our students? We're going to prioritize based on things like previous requests and deciding whether or not we need to employ end-user training. And last but not least, looking at specific needs that are out there. And from there, we're going to carry into prioritizing. And really, with prioritizing, this comes down to two things, time and money. Okay? But more specifically, we have folks out there that are creating CIPs that are based on priorities, that are based on assessments that they've done. Oftentimes, though, they're creating these plans based off of incomplete or inaccurate data. We call it Swiss cheese data. So to have a good plan, we have to have a good assessment. That's really what it all boils down to. But we're then going to decide, okay, how much time, again, do we have to spend and when are we going to spend it? Now, where this shifts a little bit, especially to our IT professionals and our IT departments, is that from an operations standpoint, we're asked to go out and execute. We're asked to go out, we're asked to keep the lights on. We're asked to keep the service levels high. We're asked to keep everything working and making sure that we have a secure environment. But this is truthfully the place where this model starts to break down for most departments across the country that we've spoken with. And there's a lot of reasons for that I'm going to unpack here in just a few moments. But as IT professionals, we're asked to go out and execute on our day-to-day. We're asked to execute on projects, software upgrades, migrations, dropping wires, whatever it may be. And in many cases, we're asked to execute on plans that were really generated and built around bad priorities and bad assessments. So we have to take all of that into account. And the reason we need to make this a circular process is so that we can ultimately start to feed information back up to the top. So year after year, we're capturing and maintaining good information that we can give back to our decision makers. Now the maintain phase, that's pretty straightforward. Okay, we're asked to go out and just really do our jobs. But one of the most critical pieces here, and historically where this breaks down, is that we've been given tools in the past that were cumbersome, that were hard to use, that did not allow us to capture clean data. So instead of using that system that we have in place, we would actually spend more time to go around it because we just don't want to bother with it. So ease of use is really the number one variable. Coming from a software perspective, to say, hey, I need to put tools in the hands of my people that are easy to use, that is going to encourage them to capture good data. And by doing so, they're going to have the ability to do a lot. They're going to have an ability to show the work they're doing, but it's going to allow leaders to justify staffing, to justify budgets, and ultimately justify needs. Now, earlier, I mentioned that perception gap. And the slide that you're seeing on screen right now, you're seeing a line. On the right-hand side of that line, there's assess, prioritize, and plan. And typically, the folks that live on the right-hand side of this line, those are the Brians of the world. They need to have information so that they can properly assess and prioritize and plan. And that's what they're doing. And doing a good job, by the way, Brian. But on the left-hand side, these are our operators. These are our teams that are out there. We're doing the day-to-day work. We're taking care of trouble tickets. We're doing our projects. We're executing on plans that have been given to us to execute. And again, one of the main reasons why this wall, that line really represents a wall, is that there is no information typically communicating back to the top to show the work that's getting done with any consistent basis. And again, a lot of that comes back to not having processes in place that are easy to use, and not leaning on the technology that's letting us keep up with the technology that's out there. So guys, at this time, what we're going to do is take a few moments to see if there's any additional questions, and then we're actually going to jump into a quick product demonstration. But I do want to take a quick pause just to see, Dennis, if there's any questions that have come up that are maybe not more product specific at this time.
There are a few questions, but like I said, right now they're more product specific, so it might be more appropriate to hold those until after you've done the demonstration.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So everybody, we're going to take just a quick moment to give you a quick overview of some of the products we have here at SchoolDude and Dude Solutions, and then from there we're going to take a moment to jump specifically into our Technology Essentials Suite. So really just running left to right, for anybody who's not familiar with us as an organization, we did start in the maintenance management realm with facilities maintenance. So a lot of the solutions you're seeing on the far left really dig pretty heavily into maintenance management, asset management, and capital planning for our facilities. We have a lot in the way of services we provide, from full-on FCAs all the way through generating and building preventative maintenance schedules for our clients. Facility usage, Trip Direct. There's a lot of different products specific to our schools, but also we do work with energy, a new product, Energy Manager, helping us track all of our utility accounts. And then safety, another tool that we actually use here in our shop. It's a mobile app technology that allows us to communicate information on demand and messaging on demand, but also just be a central hub for any information that we want our teams to have access to at any time on a native app that does not even require an internet connection. But I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen, which I will take just a moment here, and we'll be jumping into the Technology Essentials Suite. So bear with me just one moment while we do that. All right. Now, everybody, what you're seeing right now, this is Technology Essentials. And we made a few decisions about a year ago to work on sunsetting some of our historical products, our previous help desk, which we called Incident, with the desire to roll everything into one central platform, the latest and greatest technology when it comes to asset discovery and asset management from an agentless perspective, agentless asset management, but also mobile devices, looking at smartphones and tablets and better ways to manage those in our classrooms. One just fun fact real quick before we do dive in our first 8 months with Insight going live, we actually had 1.8 million devices that were discovered. So for a few moments here, I'm going to run you guys through some highlights of what Insight and other products within our Technology Essentials platform can do, and then obviously speak about the advantages about having everything in one centralized place and in one integrated platform. So everybody, the different charts and graphs you're seeing on screen right now, this is all interactive and clicky, but really to set the stage here for Insight, it being an agentless asset management tool, all that's required is to download an installation of something called a PAD. It's a proxy adapter and discovery tool, and at which point we'll typically put that on a server and we'll plug in some IP ranges, we'll do some IP mapping. We have the ability to start scheduling scans to occur at whatever frequency that we want. We're using different probes and different technology to go out and bring back an accurate picture of literally everything that's on the network, but also making way for a centralized place to load in things like non-discoverable devices as well. The tool even has the ability to reach more dynamic or remote devices through endpoint scans. Regardless, we want to make sure that we have a clean picture of everything in our environment. So we actually scanned about 100 machines here in our shop. You'll see that we are a Dell shop pretty heavily. We did change some names, so you'll see a lot of NFL players here. I promise they don't work here. But for today, I'm just going to jump right into one specific machine to give you an example of the level of detail that's going to come back. Obviously, we're looking here at a lot of information about my hardware details, network details. We also have sections for building out budgetary tracking. I can load in purchase dates, replacement dates, costs, funding sources, PO numbers. I can do that manually. I can do imports. I can even barcode scan a bill of lading to load in new data. So beyond the basics here, across the top of the screen, you'll notice that we're able to identify the monitors that are plugged into that machine, which is huge. We're able to see every single software signature, including licensable inventory, and we'll unpack that here in just a moment. But there's a lot that's coming back, including warranty information. We have multiple APIs written to bring back warranty data automatically for Dell, HP, Lenovo, Toshiba, Sharp. You have abilities for loading in attachments and histories of locations. But one thing I did want to point out here is we also have a direct integration and tie-in to our help desk. So at any time I can see a full work history, not only from my help desk, but right here at the asset level. What work has been done, who's done that work, and when was it completed?
And could I just add one thing? And that's really interesting, I think, because you're looking at when do you refresh an asset. I won't go into any specifics, but computers are like cars. Sometimes there's bad years and lemons. So there's been times where we just do a wholesale replacement of some models that are just highly problematic and driving a lot of labor. This is a really unique ability to pull together the help desk view with your assets and see not just from a compute what's the most problematic and how can you sort of hit those chronic areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. So, moving an inventory system like this and an asset management system like this beyond just static data, we have a lot built in. There's a lot in the way of abilities to set up an unlimited number of alerts. If I want to be notified about a machine moving or a warranty getting close to expiration or really anything at all, I have those capabilities. For the purposes of today's presentation, I'm not going to drill into the specifics of every type of asset that we can scan and discover and bring back into your inventory, but if we need to set up separate meetings, we most certainly can. I do want to touch on one thing, though, and this is just a real-time example of how, even in our shop here, our IT help desk is using this product to be proactive in nature, and also how many of the clients that I've spoken to across the country are how they're using this tool to be more proactive. Something that Insight does exceptionally well is bringing back a clean view of all of your software signatures, but also normalizing that data, making it easy to look at. Anybody who's used the SCCMs of the world knows, unless you love writing scripts, it's not going to be easy to get access to this info. So whether I'm clicking into an OS distribution to see, okay, where are those culprits that are still using XP, and finding out within seconds where I have specific OSs installed, I also have an ability to look at every single software signature that I have. Now we're using ISO tag and digital product IDs to bring back a clean, friendly name view. But let me give you a quick example. Let's say that Sally's having an issue with her computer and her Internet Explorer is not working. First thing I'm going to probably end up doing is looking at Java. I'm always going to point the finger there first. So with this system, I can go in and I can take 400 pages worth of signatures. And I can sort that to look at specifically, okay, I've got Java installed on these machines, but even more specifically, I want to look at 7.0.710. Where is that happening? So now not only can I take care of Sally's ticket, I can look at other machines that may have been maybe impacted that we're not even aware of yet. Last couple of things here. We do have, beyond our APIs and partnerships with manufacturers, we also have a partnership with Microsoft. So looking at licensable inventory specifically, we'll actually be able to bring back product keys for your licensable inventory for Microsoft. That will be loaded in. We deleted ours. Don't get too excited. We deleted ours for security purposes here. But you also have a place now where you can load in all of your product keys. Have a safe harbor in one centralized place to track, but also calculate licensable inventory. Hey, I'm paying for 5 of this chargeable licensable inventory. I want to make sure I've got 5 installed. And the last piece here, and I think touching on what Brian had mentioned about the importance of patching, with our relationship with Microsoft, we can bring back automatically an understanding of what updates are out there and how important are those updates. Now, to move things along, everybody, I want to jump over to the help desk very quickly. Just give you a quick snapshot of this. Help desk is, again, being rebuilt. So we've got about 2,100 clients that are using our previous help desk tool, but with a need to push to a more ITIL compliant solution, along with just, again, that desire to have everything in one platform, we're rebuilding. And very, very excited about this tool. It's going to bring capabilities like email to ticket, online requesting, along with work management that you can fit to any organization. Whether we're working out of a queue-based approach or just individual one-man or one-woman shops, we can really scale to the need anywhere. Managing tickets, really coming back to that APPEM model, one of the biggest barriers to getting good, clean data is having a system that's hard to use. So all of that's been taken into account. You can call it software ergonomics if you want, but we want to make sure that our end users and our customers that are submitting tickets can just send an email or have a simple form to fill out, or our technicians that are out in the field working, they've got access from any device that's connected to the internet, and all that we're asking them to do is fill out as few forms or fields as humanly possible. So it could be, hey, just give me a description and tell me, even generically, what specific, what type of issue is it that we're having. Okay. So a couple of options there, but we most certainly want to make sure that this is getting us away from any fears of administrative task. So whether I'm walking down the hallway and I want to take 30 seconds to create a ticket on my mobile device, or whether I'm sitting in the desk at a desk wanting to create a ticket from there, we want to make sure it's easy. Now, from a management perspective, guys, we're looking at a master ticket list right now that I can sort by really any category, any of these columns I can drag and drop to put in the sequence that I want them to be, and even save them as my own personalized view. But we definitely want to make sure that if I want to have saved reports, I can pull those reports up within a matter of seconds. I'll give you a quick example. I believe I have a report in here called closed tickets. Pretty straightforward. Here's a list of my closed tickets, but I can add an unlimited number of filters until I'm satisfied with the data that I have, and I can save that additional reporting as well. Now, the goal here is to get you guys where you're tracking total cost of ownership. Okay. The last thing we'll hit on, and I'm going to wrap things up, is in the same platform, We are partnered with Android and with Apple to bring about an MDM, mobile device management capability. Just to hit the high points, this is a little bit of a different approach with MDM. We are going to be putting clients or device controllers on devices to allow actual management options. But once we have a device enrolled with the clients on board, we have immediate management capabilities such as wiping the device, locking it, unlocking it, or pushing and removing applications. And the last thing I will touch on is having an ability to set up ultimately what's very similar to a group policy for your mobile device fleet. Say, okay, this group of users, we're going to put these restrictions on this device. We don't want them to be able to look at YouTube, so we're going to turn that off. Or maybe we do want to control the content of what they can look at on those devices. And I will tell you, with iPads and other technologies in the classrooms, this is obviously a very, very big need right now, and a growing need across the country. Everybody, will go ahead and wrap things up, and we'll finish up with some questions.
Great, thanks, Forrest. We do have a couple quick questions. We have time for just a few here. This is a question for either Brian or Forrest. You mentioned, I think it was Brian earlier, that you mentioned that you do work order surveys in order to get feedback on the resolution of work orders. Is that for every work order, and what's the response rate you've seen from those?
So it goes out on every work order. We get about, it's a little over 80% response rate on that. And then, you would expect that most people would say something when it wasn't that great, but we actually get a lot of very, very positive responses. We get a bigger percentages, much more complimentary in that space as well.
Great, thanks. Forrest, you mentioned that the product has the ability to set up an unlimited number of alerts. Are those alerts customizable? Does it include standard alerts with the product? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. We've got about 15 standard alerts that are already built in and what you would call more out of the box, including things like a warranty is within 30 or 60 days of expiring, or a machine is moved, or a machine hasn't checked in a certain period of time. But you can really, around any Boolean principle, you can build any number of alerts that you want on your own. You also have the ability to just pick up the phone and call us. And our team here can help you set up those alerts as well. But definitely can build an unlimited number of your own user-defined alerts, as well as lean on and leverage the alerts that we've built into the system already.
Great, thanks. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Can the inventory tool automatically discover warranty information on devices?
Yes, it can. We've got about 95% of the market covered through APIs. So again, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Toshiba, and Sharp. We can go out and get those warranties automatically. It's a huge time saver to not have to worry about going to those websites and telling them you're not a robot and putting in the captchas and then plugging in model numbers, or serial numbers. So yeah, that is a capability.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today for today's presentation. There were a couple of questions, I think, that we might not have gotten to. If you submitted a question through the Q&A section of the platform, someone from SchoolDude will respond to your question directly by email. And if you still have any questions about anything you heard today, I'd encourage you to follow up using this information in the final slide. You can email sales@schooldude.com or call the number there on the screen. And just a reminder that everybody will receive a link to this presentation within a few days. So I'd like to thank our speakers, Brian and Forrest, for a terrific presentation. Thank you to all attendees for joining us today. And if you haven't already done so, please also take a minute to download the additional resources that SchoolDude provided in the bottom left-hand of your screen. So thanks again for participating, and everybody have a great day.